and weird to do that on a per-person basis. So the building manager saw an opportunity to, consolidate everything into one large pipe and then basically spread that out through wireless access points, so everyone doesn't have to have their own router, and it's working pretty fine generally. That's like Bob says, anything to anything but no promises. It's like sort of a no promises bid.
Is Verizon providing the pipe?
I actually don't know who's providing their pipe. But
I could also comment if there's a moment.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brad.
Comment.
A couple of things strike me here. Again, NetBlazer is for at least the next 4 to 5 years focused on businesses. But as we look for where's the talent, there are two things we're trying to do. One is work on incentives so that those who have either skills or locations that are advantageous for repeaters and so forth, that they're incented by free bandwidth or recognition or something, that they're incented to contribute to the operation. And among other things, there are pools of resources known as IT outsourcing firms. And in the business IT market, most companies who have less than 50 employees do not have an IT guy. They outsource to somebody local, and it's not somebody in India, it's somebody in Boston or in Washington, D.C. who can come by and take the virus off of the receptionist's PC or do whatever. Those firms, which vary from a two-man shop to a 30-person division of a national, they're in every city, and they have tons of skills, and they've looked at things, at least in the Boston people we've talked to, 15 out of 15 companies I've talked to are falling over themselves to participate in what we're doing. So I think you can find pockets of skills, and the question is to figure out incentives so that people who have the skills at different levels are prepared to contribute to making the thing scale. When I talk about moving to 50 markets, it's not by being a carrier and going there and funding a pile of people. It's by effectively franchising, finding entrepreneurs and businesses who want to open up neighborhood things using our cloud-based software and marketing and brand and so forth. The other comment about how it's important to distinguish between the access network and the middle mile. If you're in Lafayette, Louisiana, there's a municipal fiber network that's real powerful, and you can get 100 megabit connectivity to anywhere else in Lafayette, Louisiana. But Lafayette, Louisiana has to pay an arm and 3 legs for connectivity to the internet because their middle mile is basically AT&T. If you're talking about an apartment complex, you need to get connectivity. NetBlazer, I don't have a solution for the middle mile except to aggregate enough people that a competitive fiber provider is prepared to build to somewhere near the neighborhood. And I'm afraid I don't have a better answer there. But if you're talking about access networks, you can do them wirelessly. You can do them with a mixture of wireless and wires. We look like a wireless access solution, but we have people who run wires between things, and that fits in our architecture and our model. The point is to incent people to behave in a fashion that benefits the neighborhood, and then clone the neighborhood. And the final thing I'd comment, yes, you need IT support, but think about what's happened to computers and Wi-Fi routers over the last, say, 20 or 30 years for computers and the last 15 years for Wi-Fi routers. They've gone from being complete black magic to being things that consumers can buy over the internet or whatever and plug in, and maybe you have to get your brother-in-law who knows a little bit more to help you, but the Greek pizza, the people that run the local pizza shop just added Wi-Fi for their customers. And they do not have a clue, but they bought a business internet package product from Micro Center and plugged it in, and a day later they have something running. What's happened is the products have been honed to be self-installing to dramatically simplify what's needed. So as you work up a neighborhood model with what your products need to be that the people need to purchase to join, you can finesse those products to the point where you don't need a lot of IT support. We've seen it happen with computers, somewhat, certainly a lot, not enough. And we've seen it happen with Wi-Fi routers. Again, a lot of good stuff has happened, maybe not enough, but it's getting better every year.
I just want to emphasize that there's nothing wrong with paying people like the sidewalks. The question is how you pay them. So we're going to see we're going to see dramatic improvement in simplifying things. As I said, still 1880, but you don't have to make it happen by magic. You don't have to get people to volunteer. Just get together your neighbors and hire somebody as an option, and the price will go down. Just don't have them charge you per month per bit or have some irrational pricing scheme.
Before we take the next question, are there any graduate students here?
But they're in Puerto Rico.
And if any are watching on the webcast, we'll find you.
So I don't believe it. I've tried to run community networks. I don't think you can get across the ocean with a community network or get service to Japan. If this model works, it would work for power generation, and some people do it for power generation, but most people buy power from the electric company. I don't think we can get coverage in unpopulated areas. I take the train, and I barely get internet service on the train. There's a lot of places the train goes where there's nobody living nearby to provide that mesh network. And even if this technology is community-based and works, and even if we can write the software stack with community, and the experience of that has been fuzzy, we can't build community-based silicon. We can't, there's a lot of manufacturing that needs to be done with capital. So this approach will work in some small areas, but it's always going to be marginal.
I've got a great answer.
I'm sure you do.
I certainly have some comments on that.
Yeah, I think Bob considers that a lob.
No, remember, I am not arguing for community networks in the sense of let's all get together, have a bake sale, and say state you. Okay, that you need to encourage a market, like in the routers at home, those are scaled as commercial products when you create as a market for it. So I see starting locally to create the things, so you start to expect, for example, we used to have to pay to use bathrooms in the US. And the Supreme Court basically ruled out, but we start to get expectations. You don't, when you go to a restaurant, you don't pay by the hour for the table. So we're going to start to expect communities to provide roads. You might start out with your driveways, your private roads, and then you get together as a community to fund it, as a country to fund it. So take China. China right now, if there's an earthquake, their internet connection to the world gets constricted. That's stupid for their economy. One thing to understand, the internet is about normalizing to bits, and that's common infrastructure. The country will just put $1 billion into wires and be done with it. So really trying to create a commercial model and market for scaling. So by, you DIY the edges, but eventually you have commercial providers who meet the needs. So you start doing modeling, then you get people make 3D printers. You start to get the products you need to meet the market companies which will serve the needs.
Next question.
Could I comment on the silicon comment? There's no doubt that it's extremely expensive to do custom silicon. But I hark back to something that I did in the early 90s, which was called computer telephony at that time. In 1990, it was extremely expensive to do anything with the telephone network, to build products, voicemail systems, auto attendant, things like that. We leveraged mass market technology, that is PCs, built a few minor, I'm not quite sure what that sound is in the background. We built basically technology that allowed PCs to be used in the phone network, and that spawned all sorts of applications in call centers, auto attendant, voicemail, and you name it. And then dial back, international bypass, and so on. Today, if I look at the radios that NetBlazer is using, and we didn't have to invent these ourselves. These are highly directional, the very low cost radios that provide 100 megabit full duplex connection over the sort of distances we're interested in for less than $100 each, like $60 to $80 per radio. The reason they're that low cost is not that somebody designed custom silicon, it's that they found a way to take mass market silicon that was designed for Wi-Fi access points and modify it by adding additional software layers above the media access, so it's no longer Wi-Fi, but it's leveraging Wi-Fi mass market silicon to make custom radios with extra software and directional antennas. The result is, instead of buying these radios for $40, I have to pay $65 or whatever, but I'm making a 100 megabit link where just a few years ago that cost from $5,000 to $16,000 for a pair of radios. Now it costs me $160. So you can do product-based things without doing custom silicon. You can do all sorts of interesting businesses by looking at mass market technology and figuring out how to repurpose stuff that's on the right track for what you need to repurpose it to new markets. And that's exactly what all sorts of people are doing to build wireless technology, leveraging mass market silicon, but not necessarily doing Wi-Fi.
If I might quickly, first, I appreciate your declaratory skepticism, because for me that's nothing but a spur to continue with the efforts. But you know, like I said, as far as like a specific neighborhood goes, I'll keep using Mount Pleasant because that is where I live. Like, my interest is in getting it out for Mount Pleasant, and let that be it. You know, this is a decision that apparently many of my neighbors in Mount Pleasant really agree with, this idea of, hey, I've got some capacity. I've already paid for an entire month worth of internet, and at night I don't use it as much when I'm asleep or when I'm away from home. Why not split that extra capacity and use it for folks in my neighborhood? And Mount Pleasant, if that works for Mount Pleasant, then let it work for Mount Pleasant. And you know, there was this article that came out about my team in Scientific American this week about Commotion, which some of you may know as the Internet in a Suitcase project that the State Department is funding. But Commotion is this, you know, automatically encryptable, automatically anonymized mesh device as infrastructure mesh software that is designed to help activists in many countries to set up their own networks and evade surveillance. Anyway, as part of all of this, Scientific American goes into explaining what mesh network is, and it did a really good job because it didn't shoot for the moon like so many people who talk about mesh do. It specifically said, as my director, Sasha Meinrath, said, that, you know, basically we're looking at maybe someday 15% of the world could be served by a mesh network. And as long as that was that community's decision and they did it in their own way, that's okay. I see nothing wrong with working with businesses to do something that is not a completely free solution with that Blazer, right? If it's your decision, and as long as you have a say in the way the infrastructure is set up, that's your call. I'm not calling for mesh networks to scale to the entire world. I'm only calling for the ability of our communities to design and maintain and run their own communications to be respected.
I want to be very careful about terminology here. That words like mesh and network have many meanings. So there's a particular technology a person is using to share the connectivity. I'll talk about this. The key thing is, once you understand the fungibility of bits and you're just moving bits around, there's a market process, and mesh is just one of the many technologies. And I think it's going to create a market for supporting that technologies, just like we have a market for concrete and for whatever else.
Next question. Doing an end run on the crowd.
We needed a mesh network of mics, I guess. Of your neighbors in Mount Pleasant, how many of them have terms of service on their broadband connections that prohibit reselling or sharing that? I'm not saying those are fair clauses or an economically efficient way to allocate bandwidth, but isn't that a problem?
In a practical sense. I'll wait for David
In the meantime, I'll just say, terms of service exist to be violated.
I do take the natural rights over the man-made rights issue here, but the answer to that question is obvious. Especially as residents, we all have giant pieces of paper that, as Bob said, we failed to call our lawyer and pay $300 for to understand. Now, to my knowledge, and I've asked many of my colleagues who are much more experienced and have many more years of experience doing this and in different places than I do, they said they have never once had a problem with this kind of thing happening. And even many businesses have basic residential class connections and leave an open Wi-Fi network and allow others to grab onto it. And now, for one thing, again, of course, I am not in any way facilitating any exchange of money for anybody's service. So I don't have to worry about that. But to go beyond a bit, I will say that I am trying to work pretty hard to find businesses on Mount Pleasant Street that have business class connections who would be interested in supporting the network. And I think that has many positive effects. One being that, on the basic service term level, they don't have that clause, generally speaking. They also have better, more reliable bit parity up and down, which makes it a better quality gateway for the entire public network. And plus, to them, they're already supporting the community by being a place where people are employed and where they offer goods or services. And to me, I'm trying to make the argument that this is another way that you've already paid for this service, but you don't use all of it 100% of the time. Let's find a way to share what you're already using with the community and become support the community in this way as well.
Let me make a stronger statement. Back in the 90s, you were not supposed to have webcams. You were not supposed to have more than one PC on your network. You were not supposed to run a server in your house. I did all of those and was rather public about it. It was my civil duty to be public about this. And basically, this set people's expectations that of course you're going to have multiple PCs in your house. Of course you're going to run a webcam. And this lesson of SOPA is that basically if you could win, I hate to say hearts and minds, you win. So if you're sharing among your neighbors and anybody complains, think of the press that generates. Now the problem is that we have a post-9/11 fear-driven society right now. So the real fear is if you have open Wi-Fi,